Jeb Bush rolled out his tax plan, and he has a plan to cut several valuable deductions that would benefit the wealthy and the business class. As I already said, this is surprising coming from a Republican candidate. Matter of fact, he's gotten a lot of flack from conservative think tanks and anti-tax policy activists because to them, any type of tax increase, even if it's the meaning closing loopholes or taking away deductions, is an anathema. So by any means, no new taxes. That's their credo. But he's proposed these tax changes, increases in taxes, particularly where carried interest tax is concerned, where he wants to tax carried interest at the same rate as we tax income. So instead of a person paying 15% for margin, not for marginal gains, but for capital gains, they would pay the regular income tax. Now, this is setting off alarms in conservative circles, but it's also setting off alarms in Democratic and progressive circles because we kept reading his policies, right? So in his policies, he's also talking about lowering the tax brackets across the board, lowering taxes across the board and breaking it down from, instead of 7 different tax brackets, he wants to break it down to just 3 tax brackets, which is great for a talking point of simplifying the tax code, because everyone thinks that simplifying the tax code is somehow going to make our fiscal and economic situation better. But he wants to break it down from, instead of having 7 tax income brackets, he wants to only have 3. And those 3 would be 28%, 25%, and 10%. Now, I circled the 25% on my paper because I know that's roughly what I get hit with our family is extremely middle class. And so he's bringing that top marginal rate down from 39.6% down to 28%, which is a ginormous tax cut for the wealthy. But if you look at the tax break that he calls himself giving the middle class, it is nothing. It is nothing. So basically this means that instead of paying 39%, the top bracket is going to be 28%, which is only 3 percentage points away from what the middle class pays. Now, you have advocates who say that we should have a flat tax, and that's absolutely absurd. There's enough economic data and tax data over the generations that shows that a flat tax would not be effective, and it also would exacerbate Kevin, I caught myself. I got it right. It would exacerbate income inequality, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But I just want to look at the absurdity of it first, that someone who's making $5 million a year would only be paying a top marginal tax rate of 28%, where my top marginal tax rate is 25%. Now, I could care less about you now moving people up from make their living off of capital gains from 15% to 28%, because now you brought everyone else down from 39% to 28%. And where conservatives are crying foul about this increase from 15 to 28% for capital gains, they are overjoyed with the cut across the board, which is going to bring everyone's top marginal rate, no matter how you make your money, down from 39%, from 39.6% down to 28%. This is a giveaway to the wealthiest among us. And he has wrapped it nicely in a propagandistic package where he can claim he's a populist, because he's going to say things like hedge fund managers should pay their fair share. So we're going to move them up from 15% to 28%. But he's not going to tell us that, he's not going to tell the general public that he's cut everyone, cut the millionaires down from 39% down to 28%. He's going to say that in the private meetings. He's going to say that with his private donors. He's going to say that with all his hedge fund buddies. He's going to be like, listen, I just, I know we're going to move that up, and that's just the marginal rate. That's not really going to be your effective rate. There's going to be some loopholes in there. But look what I did. I cut your taxes from 39% down to 28%. This is the game that they play. And he's also competing against the populist rhetoric of Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was the first to come out and say that his hedge fund buddies need to be paying their fair share. So Jeb Bush's policies are crafty. They are absolutely going to exacerbate income inequality, But I have to give it to him because he has created a policy that allows him to speak as though he's a populist, but at the same time give trillions of dollars of wealth away to the top 1%. So it's a politically brilliant stroke of genius, but in terms of the actual ramifications, it is going to gut our coffers. A conservative think tank estimated that his plan would cost us the deficit an increase by 1.2 to 3.4 trillion dollars over a 10-year period. Now, we are living in a time where we are trying to roll back the deficit, and President Obama has decreased the deficit, but now here comes the next conservative in line, the next Republican in line, who's going to do everything they can to increase the deficit. And how do you think that they're going to try to reduce the deficit? They're not going to try to reduce the deficit by increasing revenues. They're not going to reduce the deficit by reducing the spending on the military, the defense contractors, oil subsidies. They're not going to cut any of those things, which absolutely would reduce the deficit. They're going to cut on the margin of all of the social safety net programs that we have left. They're going to do everything they can to vilify anyone who's receiving Social Security, anyone who's receiving Medicaid, anyone who's receiving food stamps. They're going to vilify them and cut back on all of the programs that would actually help people move out of poverty and into the middle class, all so that they can give away these tax breaks to the wealthiest among us. This has always been the economic paradigm of conservatism post, I would say Nixon, including Nixon. But this is trickle-down economics on cocaine. This takes his brother's tax cuts to the next level. It really codifies laissez-faire capitalism as much as we can have here in the United States. It codifies the trickle-down supply-side theory, and it codifies and furthers the vision of Ronald Reagan in 1981, which has completely shifted the entire paradigm that we lived under, where wealth is not distributed with any modicum of equality, but it is absolutely redistributed to the top. And he wraps it all in a populist talking point. I have to give it to Jeb. This was a brilliant stroke of propaganda. And he's going to run it in the ground. And guess what? There are going to be people who believe this. There are going to be people who bite and take this and run with this because they believe that he is going to be helping the middle class. When in reality, the burden of the deficit is going to fall on the middle class and on the impoverished. Because we're going to lose more not tax breaks, but the word escapes me right now. We're going to lose more benefits that would actually help us move. And these are not benefits that they're giving us. These are benefits that we're paying for as a collective society, right? So they always wrap the conversation about entitlements with the jargon of entitlements, when in actuality, it is something that we are paying into. This is something that we are contributing to, but they vilify it by calling it an entitlement and making it seem like this is something that the wealthy are only paying for, when in actuality, we as a collective society, in one way or another, are all contributing to. And when these tax breaks cause an increase of the deficit by trillions of dollars, the first thing they're going to come after is your health care, your Social Security, and your food stamps, and any safety net that would actually help you out.